All right, telecommunications management. That's what we're diving into today, you and me. And it seems like you're really considering this whole career path. I gotta say, from the RoleCatcher snippets you sent over, I can see why.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely a field that's heating up. I mean, just look at how fast technology changes these days. It's only getting more in demand.
Seriously, like by the time I figure out how to even use my new phone, bam, two newer models are already out. But okay, before we get lost in the latest and greatest gadget, let's break this down. When we say telecommunications manager, what are we actually talking about? Am I picturing someone like on a construction site somewhere, or is this more of a desk job with maybe a side of carpal tunnel?
It's funny you say that. It's kind of like a mix of both worlds. Think managing different projects, leading teams, but also like really getting into the technology. You're the one making sure installations go smoothly, troubleshooting any problems that pop up. Basically, you're keeping everyone connected. And honestly, that's not even touching the whole having to constantly learn about the latest tech part of it.
Okay, so staying ahead of the tech curve is a big deal here. I notice in the Rollcatcher excerpts, they mention that managers with those specialized certifications, like for 5G implementation, they can see a pretty sweet salary bump, like 15% on average.
It's true.
So yeah, if you're the kind of person who loves geeking out over the newest tech toys, this could be a perfect fit.
Absolutely. But, and this is important, it's not just about the technology itself, right? You have to be able to explain all those complex ideas, but to your team, to vendors, basically make sure everyone's on the same page, tech savvy or not. That's where those people skills really come in.
That's a really good point, especially when you think about those industry trends you pointed out. It's constantly changing, so you got to be comfortable in that kind of fast-paced, always learning environment. You know, it reminded me of a quote from one of the articles. It said, "Telecommunications management is not a career for the faint of heart, but it is one for those who crave challenge and innovation." Something like that.
Yeah, that's spot on. It definitely takes a certain type of person to thrive in that world. And speaking of challenges, we should probably talk about those pros and cons you flagged. There's the high earning potential, which is obviously a big plus.
Always narrates.
Right. But then on the flip side, there's the potential for, long hours, constant pressure. What are your initial thoughts on that trade-off?
I mean, it's true. It's like they say no job is perfect. But I think it really boils down to knowing yourself, right? Like, are you someone who gets a rush from solving those really complex problems? Does learning new tech make you feel energized? Or does it make you want to, like, chuck your phone in the ocean and go live off the grid?
That's a question worth asking yourself because it speaks to like the core of what this job is all about. It's not a career where you can just coast.
Definitely not. Which brings us to the big question, the million-dollar question. What does it actually take to become a telecommunications manager? What are the skills, the education? Give me the rundown. I mean, it's no surprise that you need some serious tech skills, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking like computer science, network engineering, the whole nine yards. But and I found this really interesting. There was also this big emphasis on things like communication, critical thinking, even some administrative skills.
Really?
Yeah, because ultimately you're leading teams, you're managing projects. You need to be able to communicate all those complex ideas clearly, whether they're technical or not.
So wait, not only do I have to be like a tech whiz, I need to be a communication guru too. That's a lot.
Think of it this way. You could have all the technical knowledge in the world, but if you can't explain it to anyone, or if you can't delegate tasks well or manage a budget, you're not going to get very far in a management position. It's those soft skills. They're what allow you to actually use all that technical expertise.
It's like having the latest, most expensive computer, but not knowing how to, actually use all the cool features it has. But
Yeah.
speaking of starting out, you don't just magically become a manager overnight, do you?
Nope, definitely not magic, unfortunately. It's more of a climb, like you were saying earlier.
So more like starting out as a, what was it, telecommunications technician? You're the one out there, like braving the elements, maybe climbing those telephone poles we were joking about.
Yeah, you might be, especially early on. But more than anything, you're building that foundation.
Yeah.
So as you get more experience, you might move up like to a junior engineer position, then a specialist role, and eventually, who knows, maybe even a senior telecommunications manager. And of course, like we talked about, each step usually comes with more responsibility and, yeah, potentially a bigger paycheck too.
Okay, so there's a real path to climb that ladder. You know, when I was looking at those Rollcatcher excerpts, one thing that jumped out at me was the part about building a portfolio. And they weren't just saying, like, list your skills. It was more about showcasing your wins.
Yeah, 100%. Think of it less like a resume, more like you're telling your professional story. So for example, Did you solve some really tricky network issue? Or maybe you led a team to implement a whole new system, but under a super tight deadline. It's those kinds of stories that are really going to help you stand out.
Yeah, like a highlight reel, but for your career. Love it. And speaking of putting yourself out there, the excerpts also mention networking a lot. And I'm assuming we're not talking about the fiber optic cables here.
Right, although, hey, knowing about those wouldn't hurt. But no, in this case, it's all about building those relationships with other people in the industry. Going to conferences, maybe joining some online forums, connecting with mentors. You never know how valuable those connections might be down the line.
It's true. Sometimes it really is about who you know, not just what you know. Although knowing your stuff is definitely critical when it comes to those interview questions you were talking about, because let's be honest, these aren't your grandma's interview questions, are they?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
They really want to dig deep and see how you think, how you handle real-life situations. Be ready to talk about how you stay updated on all the latest technology.
Mhm.
How do you approach problem solving? Even like what happens if there's a total network meltdown? How do you handle that kind of crisis?
Oh, man, because technology, it doesn't always cooperate, does it? I'm remembering this one time my internet crashed right in the middle of a live stream. Talk about a crisis. But anyway, I digress.
Totally. But that's the point, right?
Mhm.
They want to see that you can think on your feet and that you actually have the skills and the experience to back it all up.
Mhm.
So be prepared to give specific examples. Don't just say, I'm a great problem solver, prove it.
Show, don't tell, right? I like it. And speaking of being prepared, we have to talk about those like 120,000 interview questions from RoleCatcher. That's a lot of questions.
It's a gold mine. Use them. Practice. Refine your answers. And you can even try to anticipate those curveball questions they might throw your way.
Think of it as your secret weapon to ace that interview. You can walk in feeling super confident, prepared, and ready to really impress them.
Confidence is key for sure. It shows that you believe in yourself and that you're genuinely excited about the opportunity.
And speaking of opportunities, we've really been diving deep into this world. So the big question is a telecommunications manager career in your future?
That is the million-dollar question, and
Yeah.
ultimately the only one you can answer. But we do know that the demand is there, and it's only going to get bigger as technology keeps advancing.
Absolutely. Because let's face it, the world runs on staying connected. And as technology changes, we need people who can design, implement, manage all those systems. It's a lot. It really is. And I think that's what's so exciting about this field. From what we've seen in these RoleCatcher snippets, it's not just a job, it's a chance to be a part of something that's constantly growing and changing.
Yeah, and not just to be a part of it, but to help shape how the world communicates. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a pretty amazing time to be in telecommunications when you think about it.
It really is. And as you're thinking about all of this, about whether this is the right career path for you, it's important to remember it's not just about the tech skills, right?
Oh, 100%. It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's about leadership, communication, being comfortable with always learning new things. It's about, facing challenges head on and using your skills to solve real problems.
And those are skills that, honestly, they can take you anywhere. Even if you end up exploring other career paths down the line, what you learn here, that's going to be valuable no matter what.
Absolutely. But for the folks who are really drawn to technology, who love that fast-paced environment, and who are excited by the challenge of, keeping the world connected,
Yeah.
it could be an incredibly rewarding career.
Totally. And as you're weighing your options, deciding what that next move looks like for you, just remember what we've learned today from these RoleCatcher insights. This is a career path that demands a lot, no doubt, but the rewards are definitely there. You'll need to be dedicated, have that passion for technology, and of course, you got to have those people skills.
Oh, and don't forget those certifications. I know we mentioned it, but that 15% salary bump for specialized skills, that really stuck with me. It's worth it to invest in yourself, stay ahead of the curve, especially in a field that's constantly evolving.
Such a good point. It's not just about getting your foot in the door. It's about always growing and learning throughout your career. And hey, who knows? Maybe someday you'll be the one calling the shots, shaping the future of telecommunications.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
Talk about a story for the highlight reel. But until then, keep researching, use those RoleCatcher resources, practice those interview questions, and most importantly, stay curious. The world of telecommunications is out there waiting.
With a lot of incredible opportunities.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, we're wrapping up this deep dive into the world of telecommunications management. Hopefully, you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even gave you that extra boost of confidence to take that next step.
It's been great exploring all of this with you.
Just likewise. And to our listener, best of luck on your career journey. Remember, the future is just a connection away.